Revenge with Karen.
I knew something was off the second the elevator skipped my floor. 18 years in this building, and that elevator has never skipped my damn floor. I waited. It dinged. Nothing. Dinged again. Still nothing. So I took the stairs, heels echoing off concrete, heart doing this weird syncopated jazz beat it hadn't done since the last Acquisition War. When I finally got to the executive wing, I saw him. Not the CEO, his son, or slicked back like a discount soap opera villain, a jawline you could slice cheese on, and a photographer crouched on my rug, adjusting his lens like it was Oscar night. That was my first Monday back from a weekend spent writing a 63-page strategic rollout for our European expansion. My office, well, formerly mine, looked like a catalog spread from Tech Bro Monthly. Chase was standing there like he owned the lease, one foot propped on my filing cabinet, holding a reusable bottle the size of a toddler. "You're here early," he said without looking. "Don't worry, we'll find you something adjacent to your skill set." He snapped his fingers and struck a pose. Snap. The flash hit me harder than the insult. Now, before we dive deeper into whatever brand of nepotistic circus this is turning into, let me just slide in something quick. If you're one of those glorious rebels listening without subscribing, do us all a favor. Hit that little subscribe button. Toss a like. It helps more than you know. And trust me, you don't want to miss how this saga unfolds. All right, back to the slow-motion car crash that is Chase. 18 years. That's how long I'd been at Palaxis Solutions. Joined back when our break room had a single Mr. Coffee and the CFO used his personal Gmail. I helped launch 3 separate divisions, built onboarding processes that cut turnover by 40%, quietly mentored 24 employees who now led their own teams. Never asked for plaque, never needed one. My corner office wasn't just glass and skyline, it was earned. I fought for that view with long nights, delicate negotiations, and enough political acrobatics to qualify for the damn Olympics. But promotions, recognition, they came like bad weather in spring, predicted but rarely on schedule. I was fine with that, mostly. The CEO, Alan Greaves, always been elusive, brilliant but slippery. The kind of guy who said we'll circle back and meant I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that. Still, I respected him. He didn't micromanage, and when the company nearly imploded during the 2009 crash, he handed me the vendor contracts and said, "If anyone can keep us afloat, it's you." I did. For 18 damn years, I did. And when the whispers started, Greaves is retiring soon, COO role might open, people started looking at me differently. The board stopped calling me operations lead and started using phrases like strategic backbone. One even joked, "Amanda, you might just outlive us all." I smiled politely, knowing damn well half of them were 2 drinks deep and still thought blockchain was a board game. So I kept my head down, focused on building systems, quietly took on the messes no one wanted. I became the cleaner, the fixer, when they leaned on when deals got messy or lawsuits loomed. And when the CEO's assistant, Meredith, asked me to review the corporate charter for minor compliance updates, I did, thoroughly, painstakingly, clause by clause, over 6 months. Because here's the thing, power doesn't always walk in with a title. Sometimes it's tucked into paragraph 12, sub-bullet B, hiding in plain sight while everyone's too busy fighting over office space and parking privileges. That morning, as I stared at Chase's smug face and his $1,000 loafers parked on my rug, I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply set down my badge, smiled, and said 7 words that made him pause for the first time that day. "Tell your father the board review should be enlightening." Then I walked out, not defeated, not even angry, just done pretending. The photographer was already inside when I opened my office door. Tripod legs splayed like a crime scene, ring light humming low, lens trained right on the chair where I'd eaten 3,000 late lunches and cried through 2 acquisitions. "Excuse me," I said, already knowing it wasn't a mistake. He didn't flinch. "We've got 10 minutes before the light shifts. You're Amanda, right?" I didn't answer. Just stepped aside as Chase Greaves strolled in behind me like he'd just bought the building on Zillow, wore a too-tight suit jacket with no tie, held a lavender protein shake, and grinned like a dentist's kid who'd never paid a deductible in his life. "Ah, Amanda," he beamed, arms out like we were old summer camp pals. "Big day, huh? Rebranding, refreshing, realigning." He motioned for the photographer. "We'll do the desk first." Then the candid shot by the whiteboard, and definitely one near the window. Gotta show the vision. I stood there, keys still in one hand, coffee in the other. Why is someone taking photos in my office? Chase smiled like I'd just asked him where the stapler was. Oh, right, forgot to loop you in. We're reassigning you, effective immediately. He didn't even flinch when he said it. Just waved a casual hand through the air like he was brushing crumbs off a catered sandwich. New blood, new era. Dad and I had a long talk this weekend. Fresh perspective is key. I didn't speak. Didn't blink. My brain ran a quick systems check, voice steady, posture tall, heart rate surprisingly stable. The only thing that flared was my jaw, tightening once before settling like concrete. Reassigning me to where? He shrugged. Still working that out. There's a lot of vertical mobility in whatever that client support subunit is. He made a vague gesture, like he was warding off a bee. We'll figure it out. I looked around. My plants, my binders, the budget printouts taped to the wall. 18 years of earned clutter. He stepped in front of it all like he was touring a pop-up museum called Woman Who Worked Too Hard. Could you? He gestured at me like I was a stray elbow in his selfie frame. Just a sec, Amanda. That's when I set my badge on the desk. Let's do this right, I said. He blinked. Probably expected a tantrum. Maybe tears. Definitely some sort of righteous HR-laced monologue he could record and forward to Meredith with a subject line like handling old guard drama. But I just smiled. Calm, patient, knowing. Tell your father, I said slowly, enunciating like I was reading off a legal notice. The board review in 3 hours should be enlightening. The photographer glanced up from his viewfinder like he'd walked into the wrong episode of Succession. Chase's smirk faltered for half a second, but only half. Sure, he chuckled. You've always had a flair for the dramatic. It's why Dad likes you. Loyalty and theater. Good mix. He turned back to the camera. Let's do one with the skyline. My LinkedIn is due for glow up. I walked out. Down the hall, past operations, past finance, past the little corner where the interns always overwatered the succulents. Nobody said anything. A few looked up, sensed something. No one asked. I didn't head to HR, didn't call legal, didn't cry in the bathroom like I did when Dave from compliance tried to steal credit for the 2018 vendor transition. I just found a table in the cafeteria, set my coffee down, pulled up the board packet on my phone, reread Clause 14, highlighted the part about interim executive approval timelines, then opened a new folder labeled Succession Audit Final. From across the room, heard someone whisper, "Is Amanda gone?" Another voice, "She got reassigned or something." Chase is in her office. Then a third, "She didn't look fired." That last one made me smile, because I wasn't, not by a long shot. By 10:07 a.m., my name had disappeared from the operations org chart, and by 10:15, 3 different Slack channels were already cooking up half-baked theories like it was open mic night at the water cooler. Amanda's out. She finally snapped. I heard she quit after Greaves Jr. came in like a wrecking ball. Word is she's joining the audit firm across the street. Big money, total boss move. Wrong, and laughably wrong. I sat in the cafeteria, my least favorite place in the building, sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup that tasted like betrayal and budget cuts. I hadn't sat in this cafeteria since 2017, when the vendor served raw chicken during safety week. But today, I wanted to be seen. Not center stage, just visible enough to spark confusion. Samantha from procurement spotted me first. She approached slowly, like I was a wild animal that might bolt or bite. She offered a soft smile. "Hey, you okay?" I returned it. "I'm fine, Sam, just taking a breather." "Is it true?" she asked, voice low. "Did they let you go?" I tilted my head. "They tried." That wasn't the answer she expected, but it landed. She blinked. "So you're still with the company?" I just gave a soft shrug. "Everything will make sense soon, promise." More people started trickling in, curious glances, a few nods. Some were clearly afraid I'd start crying and cause a scene. Others were waiting to see if I'd flip the table like one of those YouTube HR horror stories. But I just kept sipping my sludge coffee, phone in hand, reviewing my notes. The calendar app was open. Next meeting, Board Governance Review Conf Room B. Beneath that, a string of recurring entries dating back 6 months. Clause 12, Review Legal plus Chair, do not delete. Right on schedule. Meanwhile, on the 32nd floor, Chase had launched a one-man victory parade. He was already broadcasting his new title like it was a Nobel Peace Prize. Interim Chief Operating Officer Strategic Realignment Lead. That was the subject line of his mass email, CCing 3 board members and the contact list. He even blind copied an executive recruiter I recognized from a previous merger. Subtle as a brick. The message read like a pre-written obituary for everything I'd built. As we enter a bold new chapter at Palaxis Solutions, I'm honored to serve as interim COO to usher in our next phase of innovation, agility, and next-gen growth strategy. Blah, blah synergy, blah, blah verticals, blah, blah disruption. He even had the gall to sign off with "Let's make waves." I nearly choked on my coffee. He hadn't even noticed the missing documentation. Hadn't seen that his appointment hadn't gone through the required governance filters, that the signatures needed for legitimacy, chair, ethics, HR were missing, that I'd been working with legal and governance for months to shore up those cracks. He didn't know about Clause 14 or Clause 12, or the real prize, Clause 22C. Hell, I'm not even sure he knew the bylaws existed. Nepotism makes you blind to paperwork. That's its Achilles heel. From what I'd gathered, Chase had used a draft memo his father emailed him over the weekend, one that was never finalized or approved, then sent it to HR and assumed that was enough. To him, titles were stickers you slapped on a LinkedIn post. Not contracts, not legal commitments, just vibes and aesthetics. He didn't realize the house he just walked into had been structurally rewired while he was still playing beer pong at Wharton. Back in the cafeteria, Dan from compliance sat beside me. "I've got people asking if we're supposed to start routing budget requests to Chase now." I looked up. "Has legal sent out an official appointment memo?" "No, just Chase's blast." "Then hold," I said. "Let's not confuse email flair with authority." Dan chuckled. "It sounds like you're still in charge." I just smiled. In that moment, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even tense. I was tuned like a wire ready to snap into action, because this wasn't some petty little stunt. This was a full-blown chess match, and I'd been laying traps in silence for a year while they were busy playing checkers with Daddy's name on the board. The time was 10:42 a.m. The board meeting was at noon, and I was about to cash in every ounce of credibility, foresight, and surgical precision I'd spent 18 years cultivating. The boardroom smelled like leather and litigation, always did. The kind of place where million-dollar deals were struck in silence, and careers were ended by glances, not gavel bangs. The clock read 11:58 a.m. when I stepped inside. Not a second early, not a second late. 12 seats surrounded the obsidian table. 11 were filled. No one said a word as I entered. Some nodded. Some didn't. Chair Miranda Kroll, sharp as glass and twice as cold, gestured toward the open seat at the far end. Mine, still mine, I took it, not a flinch, not a murmur. The projector was already set up. I placed my folder beside it. The same blue folder I'd carried to every policy review meeting since 2021. A decoy to some, a trigger to others. Chase strolled in at 12:07, phone in one hand, smirking at something on the screen. "Sorry," said casually, not looking up. "Running a little hot upstairs. Just had to push back a 1 o'clock. So where are we?" No one answered. He took the seat next to his father, who was pretending to read his notes but had the pallor of someone bracing for a root canal. Miranda cleared her throat. "Let's begin. Amanda, would you walk us through your governance review?" I didn't stand. Just tapped the clicker. Slide 1 flickered to life on the 110-inch screen behind me. Executive Succession Risk Audit Unauthorized Appointments. The silence cracked like dry wood. Chase blinked. "What's this?" he asked, half laughing. I spoke for the first time in the room, calm, steady. "A scheduled quarterly compliance presentation, as requested by the chair back in March. You were CC'd on the calendar invite." He wasn't, but he didn't know that, because Chase never checked past anything with fewer than 5 emojis. I clicked again. Clause 12, all executive appointments require board ratification with ethics committee sign-off. Next slide. Clause 14, interim titles in excess of 30 days require 2/3 majority vote. Next slide, a list of executive names. Highlighted in green, verified appointments. 1 in red, Chase Greaves, effective date pending. His smirk was wobbling now. "Wait, what exactly is this implying?" Miranda didn't blink. "Amanda, please continue." I nodded. Next slide. Internal memo, appointment of interim COO source, unverified. No HR signature. No legal review. No chair authorization. I glanced toward legal counsel, Marjorie Rains. She was already flipping through her binder like it was a crime scene dossier. "I'd like to bring your attention to Clause 22C, I said. Ratified May 12th, mandates that any executive hire must declare any and all familial connections to existing C-level management. The failure to disclose this information invalidates the appointment under our own bylaws." "Are you serious?" Chase blurted, suddenly less sitcom smug and more deer in headlights. "Everyone here knows I'm Alan's son. It's not about what we know, Miranda cut in, cool as dry ice. It's what was filed. Or in this case, what wasn't. Alan finally spoke. Quiet. Amanda, are you suggesting his appointment is invalid? I didn't look at Chase, I looked at him. I'm not suggesting anything, Alan, I'm documenting it. Your son's appointment was processed with a backdated email and zero compliance vetting. There are no countersignatures, no supporting documentation, and no governance approval, which, according to the updated charter, means the title never existed in the first place. A beat passed. Then another. Miranda folded her hands. And you're prepared to submit this report into the official record? Yes, supporting documentation, all in the folder. PDF, timestamped, notarized where applicable. Clause 12. Clause 14. Clause 22C. Chase turned to his father, voice shrill now. You said it was fine. You said this was all pre-cleared. Alan didn't respond. Just stared at the table like it owed him an apology. Legal raised her hand. Before we proceed, I'd like 10 minutes to verify the documents and consult with HR. Miranda nodded. Granted. Everyone stood except me. I just clicked back to the first slide. Executive succession risk audit unauthorized appointments, and waited. 10 minutes turned into 14. Silence ruled the boardroom like a dictator. No phones, no whispers, just the soft clicks of legal flipping through every page I'd submitted. Marjorie Rains read like a machine, glasses low on her nose, pen dancing silently across margins. Alan sat stone still, hands clasped tight, staring at the wood grain in front of him as if he could will it to swallow him whole. Chase, on the other hand, was fidgeting, thumbing through his phone, checking his watch, shifting like the seat was laced with tacks. Miranda finally broke the tension. Let's resume. Legal didn't even raise her head. Everything Amanda presented checks out. All documents trace back through internal records and prior minutes. Clauses were ratified, properly filed, and timestamped in compliance with governance protocol. Her audit is sound. Chase let out a nervous laugh. Come on. This is bureaucratic overreach, a technicality at best. My father's the CEO. I clicked to the next slide. Calm, controlled, no gloating. Charter Revisions Summary highlights Clause 12, I said, requires all executive appointments to be ratified by the board, with an ethics review from governance and HR. This was implemented after the fallout with Jenkins in 2022. You'll recall the settlement cost us $3.8 million. A few board members nodded grimly. Clause 14, I continued, clarifies the limits of interim appointments. Any title held over 30 days requires a 2/3 board vote. It was designed to prevent shadow appointments and the silent accumulation of authority. I let that one hang. Chase's mouth opened, then shut. Now, I tapped to the final slide. Clause 22C. Ratified May 12th. This provision requires all executive hires to disclose, in writing, any familial connections to current C-level leadership. It was created after external counsel flagged us for soft nepotism exposure during the pre-IPO audit. I turned slightly, made eye contact with every board member. This clause was shared with legal, HR, the chair, and the Office of Compliance. It is not optional. It was signed by this board, and it was never acknowledged in Chase Greaves's appointment paperwork. Silence. One of those thick, uncomfortable kinds where even air feels rude. Marjorie cleared her throat. As of this moment, Chase's appointment is procedurally invalid. Without ratification, disclosure, or HR verification, we cannot legally recognize his title. Chase turned toward his father, voice cracking. You told me this was covered. Alan didn't look up. I kept going. Additionally, the internal memo Chase submitted on Sunday night, declaring himself interim COO, was backdated and sent without legal oversight. That alone is a breach of protocol. The screen blinked once more. Final slide. Recommended next steps: compliance restoration, revoke unauthorized titles. Initiate internal review. Conduct emergency board vote for interim operations leadership. No need to read it aloud. They could see the writing on the wall. Hell, it was spray painted in fluorescent orange by now. But I wanted to drive the point home. These rules weren't written to punish, I said gently. They were written to protect this board, this company, the integrity of our operations. Because next time it won't just be a vanity title or an awkward email. It could be an SEC inquiry, or worse, a shareholder lawsuit. That got their attention. Nothing like legal fire to warm a cold boardroom. Miranda spoke next. I move that we proceed to an emergency vote. Chase slammed a hand on the table. Are you serious? Over this? I'm being railroaded because I didn't fill out some form. Board member Stanton once called me the human firewall during a data breach, spoke for the first time. This isn't about a form, it's about arrogance. We have rules for a reason. You walked in here assuming immunity. Another member nodded. This isn't a coup, son. It's a correction. The tide had turned. I didn't need to convince anyone anymore. I leaned back. Let them do the math. Let them remember all the times I quietly prevented chaos. Hours I spent tightening policies they barely skimmed, the documents they rubber-stamped without reading. Because now they were reading, and Chase was out of moves. I reached into the folder I'd kept unopened until now, the one with the red tab labeled Hold Until Trigger. That's what I'd called it in my notes, the trigger, because all the governance audits, all the clause references, all the calm dissection of procedure, they were just the primer. This was the match. I pulled out a single printed email and slid it across the table like it was a divorce decree. It landed in front of legal with a quiet shuff that somehow sounded louder than Chase's earlier tantrum. Marjorie picked it up. Her lips moved as she read the timestamp. Then she froze. This was submitted Sunday night? Yes, I said, voice calm as frostbite. Routed through internal systems at 11:43 p.m. She flipped it over. Checked the print timestamp. The email is dated last Thursday. 4 days earlier, correct. She looked up, eyes narrowing like a hawk circling a limping rabbit. Was this backdated? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The room turned to Chase in unison, 12 heads swiveling like courtroom spectators on a murder trial's climax. Chase laughed, but it sounded like static. Okay, wait. Let's not be dramatic. I dictated that email to my assistant. I didn't actually write it. It was kind of a draft situation. Miranda raised an eyebrow. So you didn't send it last Thursday? I don't remember, honestly. The point is, it got filed. The point, legal said, now holding the paper like it might bite, is that a falsified timestamp on an internal appointment document constitutes a breach of both company protocol and SEC reporting integrity, especially with an upcoming public filing. She turned to Alan. Do you instruct him to send this document? Alan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I may have suggested he confirm the title before Monday, he muttered finally. You didn't say how, though, I added, eyes on Chase. He bristled. What, are you accusing me of fraud? No, I said coldly. I'm pointing out that you submitted a falsified internal memo that allowed you access to a C-suite office, systems-level credentials, and signature authority, all without legal ratification. Marjorie pushed the paper toward Miranda. This goes beyond policy violation. HR will need to begin an immediate review. HR Director Layla Jenkins, silent until now, nodded. He never cleared onboarding. No ethics review, no compliance quiz, no data handling approval. His system access was greenlit based on that memo. Chase's voice cracked. Jesus, it's not like I hacked the building. No, Marjorie said flatly. You impersonated an executive. That's not just internal fraud, that's liability. He looked around the table, eyes wide, desperate. Dad, come on. Alan stared down at the polished oak, face blank. You told me it was done properly. Chase pounded the table. I was trying to make things efficient. The company needed direction, and you said the paperwork would catch up. No, I said, not raising my voice, not shifting my tone. You said that. You said it as you strutted into my office with a photographer, posing like the prodigal son, while I was still legally one of the top-ranking executives in this company. The room went silent again, thick as molasses. Miranda took a breath. Let's be clear, she said. Chase submitted an appointment document with an intentionally manipulated timestamp, bypassed protocol, entered executive systems, and began signing off on internal initiatives. Legal added, all while unvetted, unapproved, and unrecognized by governance. Alan finally raised his head, eyes bloodshot. What do we need to do? Miranda turned to HR, lock his credentials, terminate access, begin internal audit. Layla was already typing. Security will be notified. Chase stood so fast his chair screeched. You're all letting her play you. This is personal. She's had it out for me since I walked in. I stared at him. This isn't personal, Chase. If it were, be gone already. This is structural. And unfortunately for you, I built the structure. He pointed at me like a cornered animal. You just can't handle that Dad trusted me over you. No, I replied evenly. I can't handle that someone entrusted with power-treated rules like wallpaper. Decorative, disposable, ignored. Security entered the hallway seconds later. Miranda waved them off for now. But the tone had changed. This wasn't Amanda versus Chase anymore. This was the company purging rot. and I hadn't even voted yet. Miranda didn't pause. She didn't clear her throat or look around for nods of consent. She simply adjusted her chair, clicked the end of her pen, and spoke with the same tone you'd use to read someone their rights. "I'm calling for a formal vote," she said. "Pursuant to Charter Clauses 12 and 14, as well as violation of internal governance and ethics protocol, motion on the floor is to revoke Chase Greaves's interim appointment and initiate immediate termination of access privileges, pending HR and legal review." No gasps, no debate, just the sound of pens being set down, phones turned over, and the quiet gravity of consequence pulling every word into place. As chair, Miranda continued, "I vote in favor." Then she looked to the left. "Stanton, in favor. Reed, in favor. Dahl, in favor." Around the table they went, dominoes tipping into inevitability. One by one, hands raised. Some with hesitation, others with visible relief, like they'd been waiting for someone else to go first. I didn't raise mine. Per protocol, as a presenting executive in the matter of governance challenge, I had to abstain. I sat still, eyes forward, no grin, no glare, just presence. When she reached Alan, the room stalled. Miranda didn't soften her tone. "Alan," he shifted in his chair. Jaw tight, breathing shallow. The weight of nepotism had finally become real enough to press against his bones. He looked at his son, who stood just outside the line of fire, arms crossed, face blank but eyes burning with embarrassment and fury. Alan's hand stayed down. "I vote against." The silence didn't last long. 7 in favor, 1 opposed, Miranda said, jotting it in her notes. 1 abstention. Motion carries. Marjorie from legal leaned forward, voice like cold steel. "Effective immediately, Chase Greaves's access to company systems is to be revoked. Credentials, signing authority, communications, all suspended pending investigation." Layla from HR was already tapping into her tablet. "Security has been notified to restrict elevator access and remove temporary badges. IT will begin provisioning immediately." Chase laughed bitterly, clapping once. "Wow, just like that." "This isn't theater, Mr. Greaves," Miranda said, not looking at him. "It's procedure. When you chose not to read." He turned to Alan. "You're really just going to let this happen?" Alan exhaled, long and quiet. "I let it happen when I skipped steps. When I let my name become your shortcut." Chase looked like he wanted to scream or punch something or run. Instead, he stood frozen, like a wax figure of ambition melted under boardroom fluorescence. Nobody moved. Finally, Miranda turned to me. "Amanda, thank you for your diligence. You've spared us a much deeper catastrophe." I nodded once. "It's what the charter was built for." Inside, I felt a pulse of something close to relief. Not joy, not victory, just the settling of a weight I'd been carrying too long. This wasn't revenge, it was correction. It was the system I'd rebuilt finally doing what it was supposed to do. I gathered my folder, still quiet, still composed. No smirk, no triumphant strut. Just an exhale, measured. Across the room, Stanton caught my eye and gave a small nod. Respect. Not celebration, that was enough, and Chase, he didn't say another word, just stood there watching his access evaporate while the board moved on to the next item on the agenda. Because in the end, that's how real power works. It doesn't shout. It deletes you. As the boardroom drained out into the hallway, shuffling briefcases, murmured debriefs, and tension releasing like air from a cracked valve, I stayed seated, just for a second longer. Let the silence wrap around me like an old coat I hadn't worn in a while. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt stable, like the floor was finally level again. Miranda approached with her usual no-nonsense click of heels. She stood next to my chair without theatrics. No smile, just presence. "I believe your office is still available," she said. I nodded. "Good to know." Behind her, Illa from HR appeared with a neutral expression and a small envelope. "New badge," she said simply. I took it, flipped it open. Same photo, same name, different title. She didn't announce it. No one did, but it was printed clearly on the lower corner of the card, Chief Operating Officer. I tucked it into my blazer without comment. No applause, no speeches. Just what it always should have been, a transition built on merit, signed by policy and backed by law. Quiet power rooted deep. As I stepped out of the boardroom and into the executive hall, I didn't expect a crowd. I didn't want one, but people noticed. You can't hide a shift like that, even if no one says a word. Dan from compliance stood from his desk, gave me a nod. Samantha in procurement, she stood next. Silent, respectful. One by one, people paused. Not like a standing ovation, more like a ritual. People watching a tide roll back in after years of erosion. There were no cheers, no pats on the back, just acknowledgement. And honestly, that hit harder than any cake or card ever could. I walked past the glass corridor, the one Chase had strutted through like a peacock on LinkedIn Live just hours ago, and turned the corner toward my office. He wasn't there anymore, but the photographer was. Still kneeling by his lighting rig, winding cables into loops, packing up the remnants of that little circus sideshow. He didn't look at me until I stopped directly in front of him. "You got any good shots?" I asked. He blinked, unsure if it was a trap. Yeah, couple. I mean, lighting was decent, but delete them," I said. He hesitated. I raised an eyebrow. He's not in leadership. He looked at his monitor, then back at me. "Yes, ma'am." I walked the last stretch alone. My nameplate was still on the door. No one had bothered to take it down. Inside, the desk was still warm from being misused. The chair had been adjusted too low. The framed photos were moved, but it was nothing that couldn't be fixed. I sat, opened my inbox, started sifting through the backlog. Not because I had to, but because the quarterly forecast wasn't going to write itself. And the COO's job doesn't pause just because someone needed reminding of how real authority works. Building emptied around 7:42 p.m., give or take a few stragglers clinging to inbox, zero fantasies, and lukewarm takeout. I heard the janitor's cartwheel by once, then twice, then not again. Lights flicked off one floor at a time like the building was exhaling. But I stayed. I wasn't here to savor the silence. I was here to finish the job. The glow of my monitor painted soft lines across the office, casting shadows over old commendations and framed rollout schedules that hadn't aged particularly well. I cracked my knuckles once, then reached for the secure login badge, my new one. Coup still felt foreign in my hand, like a gift I had to earn twice just to unwrap. Logged in. Pulled up the system dashboard. Top-level clearance restored. There it was, exactly where I knew it would be, the org chart admin panel. Tucked behind 4 access walls, 2 redundant password confirmations, and a biometric ping that scanned the small scar on my right thumb. I'd implemented that last one myself after a scare during the 2019 breach. No one remembered, but I did. The screen loaded. Top line, CEO Alan Greaves. Next line, interim COO Chase Greaves. I clicked. Drop-down options appeared. I hovered for a moment. Then selected, vacated. The text turned gray. Small notice popped up. "Are you sure you want to remove this designation?" I clicked yes. The field blinked, faded, disappeared, no fanfare, no confetti, just silence. A second tab was already waiting, drafted 2 months ago, updated weekly, revised after every policy meeting, every charter tweak, every quiet nod from legal and governance. Title, Amanda Keller. I reviewed it once more, cross-referenced each timestamp. Final approval logs in place, signatures present. Charter alignment confirmed. Click submit, then confirm, then finally save. The page refreshed, and just like that, Chase's name was gone. Erased not with vengeance, not with volume, but with protocol, with planning, with patience sharp enough to cut steel. I leaned back, let my eyes rest for a second. Let the moment settle in the bones where tension had lived for too long. It wasn't euphoria. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was alignment. Complete, I closed the tab, logged out of the system, packed my folder, straightened the pen tray, adjusted the framed photo of my first division team, 12 people who taught me more about leadership than any conference room ever had. At the door, I flicked off the lights, stood in the dark for a breath, then whispered to the empty room, not bitter, not proud, just certain, no shortcuts in this office. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.